before you start, Marlene, though, I just want to make a quick announcement to everybody to, please remain on mute for the duration of the meeting and Karen's presentation. We will have some Q&A after that. And so we would encourage you to use the raise your hand feature, and Sam or one of us from our team will call on you. So with that, yeah, Marlene, it's all yours.
Okay, is my camera on? I thought I turned it on.
It was on, but I don't see you now, Marlene.
Okay, well, it's the voice from beyond. So welcome, everyone. I wanted to introduce our co-chair, Sam Donaldson, who will have this meeting. James Andriacci from Ocean First was unable to be with us. He's our other co-chair. So for those of you who are on the Economic Development and Energy Environment Committee, we welcome you. And we're going to turn this over to Sam so he can proceed with the agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you, Marlene. Appreciate it. So we've got a large group. It looks like the count is somewhere closing in on 50 right now. So, and we expect more as this goes on. So we're not going to do introductions, but we would encourage you all, if you would like to, in the chat feature, if you want to drop in your name and company, that would be great. And as Ben made mention, we are going to specifically make sure we have time for Q&A at the end. So for those that are just joined, may have missed what Ben said. When we get there, if you could use that raise your hand function, and we'll do our darndest to call you out in the order that your hand is raised. But I'm Sam Donaldson. I'm with AECOM. And I am fortunate to be the co-chair of the Economic Development Committee with James from Ocean First Bank. I don't think James could be with us, but if you are here, can you shout out? Okay, I didn't think he can make it today, but and we are super excited to have Attentive represented here today, and Karen Imus is their Senior External Affairs Manager, is going to be giving a quick presentation. I don't have a lengthy bio. And I don't know if we need it, but it would be great, Karen, maybe if you could, however you're going to handle this, just give a quick background on yourself. And I believe you have some other folks from your team on as well. So if you wouldn't mind just maybe doing a quick intro of them as well. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Karen. So Karen, please take it away.
Great. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much, Sam, for the introduction. And thank you to Marlene and Ben for putting this talk together, and really appreciate the invitation and the time to chat with you all today. So as Sam mentioned, I'm Karen Imus. I'm the Senior External Affairs Manager for Attentive Energy. I've been on board for just over 2 years with the project. I come from a sort of urban planning land use background, having worked for a nonprofit called the Waterfront Alliance in the past, and having done some government relations work for a consulting firm prior to that. Joined today by two of my great colleagues. Erica Spencer-L is our New Jersey Community Liaison, and Lily Landhauser is our Policy and Regulatory Affairs Analyst, and they'll be on hand to help with the presentation and answer any questions today. We have a couple of slides to share with you. Bear with me for a moment here as I bring up my screen. Give me just a second. Can you all see the slides right here?
Yes.
Yep. All right. Give me just a sec, and I'm going to go from the beginning. All right. So what we'd love to talk with you about today is a couple of different things. Primarily an update on our Attentive Energy 2 project. Love to talk to you about where we've been since being awarded in January of this year by the BPU. Also talk to you about our supply chain resources and information about how we're talking to companies across the state in partnership, for example, with groups like SNJDC, who are doing amazing work to bring different industry opportunities to membership companies. And also talk to you a little bit about our community outreach and engagement on the ground across the state about the opportunities that the offshore wind sector has to offer. So I'll take a step back just to provide a little bit more background about who we are. So the Attentive Energy 2 project is actually a joint venture of two companies with a very strong global track record of energy development. Total Energies, which is the side
For
where
some
I
reason,
sit.
the sound is not happening.
I think we've got a little bit of background noise there. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
We can hear you okay. Yep.
All good, all good.
Okay.
No worries. So the joint venture, I was mentioning, I sit on the Total Energy side, and Total Energies is, as many of you probably know, a global energy company that has a multi-portfolio of energy projects with a very strong renewables footprint developing in the United States. That's a combination of wind, solar, battery storage. In fact, one of the projects that they developed in recent years was the solar arrays on the Delaware River Port Authority rail stations in South Jersey. And the company is really growing its renewables footprint. It is very close to being in the top 5 renewable developers in the United States. And it has partnered with a company called Choreo Generation, which is one of the leading offshore wind developers in the world, focused exclusively on wind. And there are a lot of capital resources, a lot of expertise among the staff to really bring this sort of global strength to the Attentive Energy project. This is a little bit of a snapshot of what these two companies have already done together, which is 11 gigawatts of energy being developed jointly in places like South Korea, Taiwan, the UK, and most recently, the Attentive Energy project. A little bit more locally here, we are a team of about 45 individuals based around New Jersey, New York, and farther afield in New England that bring a really deep bench of expertise. Today you're talking to the external affairs team, but we have folks in our staff that have really led very complex infrastructure permitting processes, engineers that have worked on offshore wind projects, and as well as oil and gas projects around the world. And folks working on, finance and accounting and kind of every discipline you can imagine that needs to bring a big project like this to bear. And the team is growing actively as things get off the ground. So a little bit more of a technical snapshot here, and we'll take a little bit of a step even farther back in time. The lease area that you see pictured here in the ocean, that was put up for federal auction by BOEM, the Federal Energy Agency. That is typically how sort of the offshore wind procurement process gets started. Companies compete for the rights to a lease area. Total Energies acquired this lease area way back in 2022, and we had already had a team on the ground for about 2 to 3 years prior to that, getting to know the local landscape, getting to know what different community groups and what different business associations were thinking about offshore wind. And then again in 2022, acquired the lease rights there to develop that about 80,000 acre parcel in the ocean. It is 42 miles east of Seaside Heights, which is well outside of the viewshed. And we are now under development. This project was submitted to the BPU in August of last year, so just over a year ago, and it was awarded in January of 2024. So we are now kind of getting underway with the permitting and development, which I'll speak to a little bit more. But I want to talk a little bit to the picture here in terms of, how does this work from offshore to onshore? So New Jersey last year, or over the last 2 years really, announced a process called the State Agreement Approach, which is a unique kind of transmission procurement process that would create basically a designated point of interconnection and a designated line for offshore wind developers to follow. We competed in this offshore wind solicitation with a few other companies. We were selected, as well as another company called Leading Light Wind. And basically, as part of the award in January, we were prescribed by the BPU that we would go to Seagirt as the point of interconnection. The line between the two stars that you see there is called the pre-build infrastructure. The BPU will be selecting a developer that will build that onshore infrastructure later this year. We then would use the ducts that will be developed onshore to bring our power to the Larrabee collector station. which is currently getting upgraded in order to bring that energy in. So there are multiple parties that will be executing on the success of this offshore wind solicitation. We're in close collaboration with all of those entities. But from the Attentive Energy standpoint, we are developing what's in the ocean and then bringing the cable onto shore at Seagirt, specifically at the Seagirt National Guard Training Center. Go right ahead here, sorry. Here we go. So what does it mean to be awarded by the BPU? When we submitted our application into New Jersey, it is obviously a combination of all of our kind of technical specifications, but also a lot of our kind of community engagement and community benefits footprint. This project is anticipated to generate $3 billion of economic development activity statewide. We are able to inject 1.3 gigawatts of clean energy into the grid. That is reducing CO2 emissions by more than 1 million tons, which is equivalent to the emissions of 10% of cars on the road in New Jersey. So certainly a significant air quality footprint there. That can power more than 600,000 homes. An important piece is that the community investments program that is part of our project is north of $100 million, and I'll speak more to that in detail because a lot of that is connected to strengthening the supply chain. Importantly, we are going to work closely with the New Jersey Windport, which I know is right in your backyard, both to marshal our manufacturing parts there, but also to work towards bringing a manufacturing facility to the Windport. Those commercial negotiations are currently ongoing. And so what have we been up to since the award? This is a question we get a lot, like, what now, right? You've won, and so what happens at this stage, right? So there are a couple of sort of early milestones in these last 8 months that we've really focused in on. We are starting to deliver on the community benefit dollars to partners across the state. An important one of these is that New Jersey has something called the Research and Monitoring Initiative, which is run by DEP, which supports a lot of environmental conservation and marine conservation efforts. We've already made our commitment and investment into that fund, and we're starting to provide investments into many of the project partners that are going to be working alongside the Attentive Energy 2 project. We are, as mentioned, the New Jersey Windport. We submitted a proposal in response to the Windport's notice to lease in May 2024. Confident in our proposal and our ability to move forward there. We're very actively engaged with organizations and chambers across the state as a resource for local supply chain and procurement guidance at this early stage in the process. And we're also really actively continuing to mature our project development from the permitting perspective. That is really going to be one of the key initial milestones, is to file some of the federal and state permits and getting those processes off the ground. What does that look like? It looks like putting different kinds of buoys and survey vessels out into the water to collect data and really to start to put a lot of that information together. I'll speak a little bit more specifically to the different partnerships that are part of the Attentive Energy 2 project. We are hyper-focused on a community-first approach. Many partners of ours, like SNJDC, see us on the ground all over the state. I just bumped into Ben, 2 days ago at a different event down in Burlington County. So we are hyper-focused on being on the ground, engaging with partners, talking to local residents about all their questions about offshore wind, and really supporting initiatives that are not like specifically unique to our project, but are specific to the sustainability of the state. That includes a significant investment into regional wildlife and marine conservation efforts, and significant investments towards community-based organizations, much of which is targeted to serve overburdened communities. 2 examples pictured here include working with the Trust for Public Land on open space initiatives across the state, working with groups like the Girl Scouts of the Jersey Shore on STEM education outreach programming, and a whole host of other initiatives across the state as well. 2 of our very, I think, unique pilot initiatives that are very unique to Attentive Energy are forming community advisory boards to really help with a kind of a constant dialogue about the project. I think historically, I think regions like, Salem and Gloucester counties have a history of groups like community advisory groups formed around formerly industrial pollution, right? Those kinds of CAGs that are common around community-based initiatives to clean up different projects. And we've sort of taken a similar model, but applied it to the offshore wind sector, right? Because we want to make sure we're creating a dialogue with stakeholders on the ground as this industry takes off. And I want to pivot for a moment to my colleague, Erica, who's spearheading our community advisory boards to talk more about the efforts on the ground across Salem and Gloucester counties.
Thanks, Karen. Just to piggyback everything for what Karen just said, I mean, the community advisory boards that have been set up have been served as a critical aspect in informing just the larger community about our project, the ecosystem that it will create, but also the benefits of the community advisory boards are, as a whole. And mainly they're set up to support the inclusion of the local communities in the offshore wind industry by connecting them to Jersey economic and workforce development programs. These partnerships, they include a microgrant program offering resources to local organizations, advancing environmental justice and offshore wind workforce development pathways. We're currently piloting this microgrant throughout the 2 community advisory boards in Elizabeth, Paulsboro, and Salem. We're finalizing the process, which hopefully we will, not hopefully, but we plan to launch the funds in the early part of the year. And then lastly, to increase the advisory boards have been set up to increase active community participation and project development by providing a platform for community members and groups to discuss local needs, questions with the offshore wind industry. And again, it's just we have been getting tremendous feedback, insights, guidance, as well as just expanding on our awareness of the project overall, which has served to be truly beneficial to how we have rolled out our plan for stakeholder engagement. And then lastly, I just want to mention we are in the process of rolling out a 3rd community advisory board in Monmouth County. So please stay tuned for more information on that in the next coming months. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, thank you so much, Erica. And yeah, I think, to reinforce this point, like the CAB model is really the mission statement is like what we're hearing, and really being responsive to what we're hearing. I think when CAB members, inform us that in their community, they're looking for more resources for offshore wind training programs, or they're looking for more resources for wraparound services, or they're looking for more transportation resources. We're really taking this information back and seeing how, as a developer, in partnership with the government, we can help advocate for these resources or provide some of this assistance. And so this is really going to be an evolving and long-standing model that is going to work alongside our project as it develops. I want to pivot here a little bit to talk about local labor relations, because this is obviously going to be essential to the workforce and building these projects with good paying jobs. We've negotiated MOUs with several building and construction trade locals. And then specifically with IBEW and with the carpenters, we're funding specialized training and apprenticeship programs. And I think a key underpinning here is that we're looking to really enhance recruitment efforts and bring opportunity to those individuals from across the state that may have not historically had opportunities to labor training programs. So this is a lot of coordination between us and the unions and CBOs to create these pipelines of individuals who are interested in getting access to these pre-apprenticeship programs. From a timing perspective, as we're talking about these different partnerships and different programs, many of these will start to get off the ground in 2025 as we start to steer funds towards these partners and they start to kind of activate the programs. As mentioned already, the Windport, which I know many of you are familiar with, we have plans to use the Windport for marshaling. We've participated in NJEDA's RFP, and we should have information relatively soon about the leasing timeline and the leasing opportunities. And we have a commitment towards financial investment at the EEW manufacturing facility at the Port of Paulsboro as well. And there's just a picture there of our team visiting the wind port, which was pretty remarkable to see all the progress that is being made there. The local supply chain is also another piece of our community commitment and our statewide commitments that is really essential to, I think, not only the success of our project, but really making sure that this industry is providing statewide opportunity across all counties and ensuring that small and diverse businesses have a seat at the table. We're working with a whole host of partners across the state, and this is just but one example here. We released a report earlier in the year with NJMEP focused on an offshore wind readiness gap analysis. And we really have a commitment to work with partners to figure out how to reduce barriers of entry into this sector. I think the gap analysis was very interesting because it, showed both an element of like current strengths in the terms of the capabilities that many companies in the state already have, companies that are maybe working, for example, in the defense manufacturing space or serving other kinds of industrial industries, and also understanding what is the technical assistance needed, what are kind of the other resources needed that can help position these companies, again, to participate in the procurement pathway. We'll put a link to this report in the chat. There's some recommendations there. It's an ongoing process with MEP as we release resources to communities. This is a little bit more specific in terms of how we're going to do this work. So, when we read the findings of a report like this, and based on many conversations across the state over the last 3 to 4 years, what we hear are we need things like, again, technical assistance for equipment, for understanding how to apply for grants, for incubation and innovation, for MWBE capacity building. And so there are already so many great organizations across the state that are focused on these efforts, and we're working hand in hand with these 4 here: MEP, Small Business Development Center, EDA, and an incubator called See Ahead that works specifically with sort of ocean and marine tech to really help foster that local supply chain. In the coming months, we're going to be putting a number of resources out to the communities, to groups like SNJDC. We're publishing a supply chain resource guide, which will have more specific information on procurement pathways. We're also going to be working with an entity called Oceantic that has different supply chain databases and training programs, webinars and training programs for companies. So much more to come in this space that is going to be much more detail oriented in helping companies with getting into some of these databases and getting into some of the positioning and applying into some of these grant programs. We also get a lot of questions from sort of the small business space about, like, how does this work, right? Like, are they contracting with us or with other manufacturers? And this is a little bit of a map developed by some of my colleagues who are working much more specifically on supply chain. The tier 1 is really the big equipment manufacturers that are making the big parts, right? The blades or the monopiles, and EEW, for example. And many of the medium-sized businesses would be subcontractors to those tier 1 suppliers. So for us, a lot of this is making those connections, right? And making sure that the small and medium-sized businesses understand what the bigger tier 1 contractors require in terms of being subcontractors. And then there's even a tier 3 that are really subcomponents and providing some of the smaller widgets. This is an example of the supply chain and the tier 1. These are some of the products that we will have to source, some of which will be, developed in the US, developed locally, some of which we'll have to source from overseas initially. And then these would then subcontract out to many of the small and medium-sized businesses. I also want to pivot here for a moment to talk about biodiversity and environmental conservation. This is top of mind for our project, committing to a science-based approach and protecting the state's natural resources. We're working very closely with the commercial and recreational fishing industry, and really focusing on a science-based approach to achieve a no net loss of biodiversity and a no net loss of commercial fishing revenue as we go about our project development. This requires a great deal of coordination. We have several team members who are fisheries liaisons, many of whom live around Monmouth County, that are doing this work very actively. We also have a team that's focused on much more of the research side of this and working hand in hand with groups like Rutgers University, with Woods Hole, and conducting research and monitoring efforts to make sure that we're doing our best to develop responsibly. Just the picture here shows some of the work out of a Rutgers laboratory to develop these sort of ocean drones that can monitor a lot of conditions in the water that are hugely helpful for survey activities. So we're thrilled that a lot of this work is already being done by pretty awesome team at Rutgers that has been innovating in this space for many years now. Yeah, and this is a little bit more of an example of some of the survey work that's being done out in the ocean. I think we often think about survey vessel, which is certainly part of any project survey work, but there's also a lot of pretty extraordinary technology out there. This is a buoy that is able to collect a lot of data and then transmit it back. And so BOEM, the Federal Energy Permitting Agency, has to give us the green light to put this out into the ocean, which we received earlier this year. And we kind of replace the buoys every couple of months. So it's able to measure conditions, wind speed, monitor marine life, just pretty extraordinary what this little robot can do, and bring the information back to us so we could be better informed for our permitting applications. Finally, getting here to a little bit of a timeline. We are in the planning and development phase, which takes about 3 years. As you know, you build big things. There's a lot of permitting involved, and that is, I think, really important. So we have federal and state permits that we're focused on now. A lot of surveying work, both offshore and onshore. That'll take about 3 years, and then about 3 to 4 years for construction and installation. We're looking at about a 2030 operational timeline, and then about 30 to 35 years for operations. Finally, kind of rounding it out here, this is sort of the part 2 of our kind of where we are in New Jersey today. I talked a lot about Attentive Energy 2 thus far. Just earlier this summer, New Jersey wrapped its 4th offshore wind solicitation, and we did submit another application. So the lease area that you saw in the earlier slide in the ocean, we still have capacity there to bring more energy in. And so we've proposed bringing the remaining energy into New Jersey through this new solicitation process. Very comparable type of resources, about 1.3 gigawatts, 600,000 homes, and an additional commitment to community benefits and statewide investments. And we anticipate hearing from New Jersey BPU in December of this year on that award. And that brings me to the end of the presentation, 10 o'clock on the dot, and look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
That's great. Excellent, Karen. Thank you so much. That was and to Erica as well. It was a fantastic presentation. Really appreciate that. Very informative. For those who may have joined late, we're asking if you have any questions, please raise your hand using the functions at the top of your screen. So do we have any questions? And Ben and group, just all right, while you're all thinking of questions, I don't see any just yet. So oh, wait a minute. I see Dustin has his hand up. Dustin, please go ahead.
Question I have is I work with a lot of local or young men and women in the vocational schools learning trades. What opportunity is there for them to help with these plants. I've been told that we're in a shortage of welders and things like that. Is there anything I can, like kind of, I'm on an advisory committee to Camden County Technical Schools and things like that. Is there any, and they always ask me, what is the industry looking for? Is there any shortages for entry level skilled workers that I could tell them we need more of?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for that. I can say off the bat, electrical, anything having to do with electrical, electrician, electrical technician, electrical engineer, very large shortages. And it's interesting that you asked that, because yesterday, literally, I was on a call with a colleague who's on our engineering kind of transmission side. And we were talking about like NGIT, just for example. And he said that so many of the students that may be interested in like electrical things that come in, it kind of pivot to computer science a little bit, just because there's a lot of opportunities and it's sort of a popular space, and maybe don't go into the more kind of like mechanical electrical side, which is what this is. And so I think, part of the need there is to make these opportunities more known, right? Like we have work to do in that regard, but I think it's important to communicate to the VOTECs, and we're talking a lot with the community colleges about really the need for electricians, electrical workers, because not only is that relevant to the offshore wind project, but there are a lot of transmission upgrades that are going to be taking place across the state. And that kind of grid work, it really relies heavily on the electrical sector. And we're always open to coming and visiting VOTECs or, school superintendents to have these conversations and try to provide some resources or provide some information about how to, better equip students. Like at a minimum, we have teams that go out to schools with like VR headsets that do different informational activities with students. But certainly there's like more robust information that we can offer. But again, just, to go back to your question, really anything electrical, there's huge shortages right now.
Great.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Good question. Mr. Cardona, good morning.
Hey, thank you. Wonderful presentation. That's really informative. I hope you don't, I hope you share the presentation with the group,
Absolutely.
if that's okay. Yeah, because
absolutely.
I'm from Rowan University, and there's a lot in there that we would like to sort of talk to you about and see how we can help out. Just like Dustin was looking at the future, so are we. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we'd love to talk with you.
Yeah, that's great. And so I'm compelled as a lifelong resident of Salem County, and it's great to hear the focus on Salem County. I know they have a great VOTEC as well, and a very good community college also. So it's great to hear the focus on Salem County. So thank you for that. Do we have any other questions? And it's also great to, as folks are thinking, great to hear about the hopefully the intent to locate at the Windport project. I know that the Development Council itself has played a big role in the development there. So it's a great investment in South Jersey at a great location. So hopefully that all works out and the commercial negotiations go well.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we can't emphasize enough the strategic importance of the Windport for not only us, but for many of the offshore wind projects, not only in New Jersey, but regionally. It is just having that amount of space, having bridge clearance is a huge asset that cannot be found everywhere across the region. So, kudos to the EDA and to organizations like SNJDC for championing that, because it's a huge help to being able to get these projects off the ground.
Absolutely. And with the investment that EEW has put into that as well, I see we got Charles on from EEW. So it's, they've invested a lot. The state has, so it'd be great if we continue to build that facility out. Vicki, I see you have your hand up.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Vicki Malloy with Concord Engineering. I'm also a resident in Ocean City, New Jersey. And as a resident on the coast in Ocean City, there's a lot of concern with the wind turbines that are going to be installed out in the ocean, particularly the Vineyard Wind Project that recently had damaged blades that were broken off. They were found on the beaches of Nantucket. The beaches are closed. So there's a lot of people that are concerned with regards to wind turbines. And so what would be your message to them?
Yeah, it's a great question and definitely a critical question. I think this is somewhat of a new industry in the U.S. Not necessarily globally, but certainly in the U.S. And I think we're very sensitive and responsive to the fact that people have questions, and I think they're good questions and legitimate questions. I don't want to speak on behalf of Vineyard specifically because obviously this is their project and their contracts. I think big picture, it's unfortunate that has to happened, and it definitely has to be rectified. I think on the whole, there are probably somewhere in the order of like 40,000 operating wind turbines across the U.S., both offshore but largely onshore. And probably somewhere in the order of 30 incidents of blade failure. And so I think, data shows, I think, a very small margin of breakdowns. I know that, when you feel it and you see it, it's going to have its impact. And I think that's an important point. I think it's also important to look at sort of the data around how these projects operate. I know that the Nantucket turbine is not the only question folks have about offshore wind. And, I think it's important to look at science-based information. But I think, again, we're understanding and sensitive to the fact that a lot of these things are new and that people have a lot of questions. And I think that's totally legitimate to have those questions. And if we at Attentive can serve as a resource, with any groups, right? Whether it's just a local resident or a local civic group, we're happy to be that resource. I will say that there's a group in New Jersey. It's called the Special Initiative for Offshore Wind. It's actually kind of a consortium of researchers, scientists, engineers that does a lot of research activity around project development. They've published a website called offshorewindfacts.org, and it speaks a lot to many of these questions, everything from health to marine life to cost. It's a great resource. Definitely recommend taking a look at that website for some of these questions.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Good question, Vicki. Appreciate that. Joe, I see you have your hand up.
Yes. Great presentation, Karen. Joe Maressa from Title America. I'm a 20-year board member of South Jersey Port Corporation, so I'm glad to see you've been visiting Paulsboro. My question is, has the right-of-way procurement process begun on the project that you were speaking of?
Yes, the right-of-way procurement process has begun, and I believe the BPU will announce the award in the fourth quarter, probably closer to the end of the year. I believe this is all public, but the applicants, there are 4 applicants for that right-of-way process: PSE&G, Con Edison, LS Power. I'm forgetting one, but we can look it up and put it in the chat. But yes, PSE&G, Con Ed, LS Power are 3 of the 4. They've submitted bids to the BPU. And they're going to be selecting, these applicants. And again, I don't want to speak on their behalf. They've submitted different routes. The BPU kind of recommended certain routes from Seagirt to Howell, and the applicants will have submitted kind of different permutations on that. At the end of the day, the vision is that there are 4 duct banks because our project is 1 cable. Leading Light Wind is a bigger size, and so there are 2 cables, and that leaves 1 duct bank open for a future offshore wind project.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So Karen, I just have a question, kind of the industry, the offshore wind industry has seen its ups and downs for sure. What would you think would be the top risk to the Energy 2 project moving ahead, if you can answer that?
I think that, we're hyper focused on project development and, putting one foot in front of the other. And I think we are try to mitigate for those risks by being as proactive as we possibly can. That means, advancing our commercial negotiations. That means continuing to have, and I can speak more specifically from the external affairs lens, really having a lot of community conversations and a lot of boots on the ground. I think that's a huge one. We have heard many things about ratepayer concerns, about costs. I think, we're also, very focused on trying to put that in perspective on, building new things, building new industry, and levelizing cost over time. The contract we have with the state of New Jersey for 30 years is a fixed contract, right? The price of the wind that we deliver does not change year to year. That is very different from other energy sources, right? And it's not to say one thing is better than the other, because we're firm believers in a mixed energy portfolio for the state of New Jersey. But I do think it's important to note that there are a fixed contract and a fixed level year to year. I will say that, any permitting process, and many of you are engineers, many of you work on big infrastructure, and I don't have to tell you this, but, building big things is hard, and any permitting process is challenging, right? From the local to the federal. I think what makes it more productive is making sure that we're working very hand in hand with local communities. I can tell you, just as an example, right? That right of way between Seagirt and Howell, there are a lot of overhead cables along that right of way, right? If that developer is opening up that roadway, we would strongly advocate for burying some of those overhead cables and providing more community resiliency. We would also strongly advocate for creating more floodproofing in the community. These are some things that we can control and some things that we can advocate for. I think helping communities really hand in hand and being sensitive to what's on their mind does help move some of these permitting processes along. So again, we're hyper-focused on our commercial negotiations. We're hyper-focused on those permitting processes, and just being available, right? Being available to answer individuals' questions, and again, working hand in hand. This is going to be a public-private NGO coordinated effort, and we're taking that very seriously.
Excellent. Thank you for that. It's clear why you're the senior external affairs manager with that answer. So thank you. That was great. Very comprehensive answer.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Last chance. Anybody? Anyone? All right. Excellent. Well, again.
Thank you. Can I just add one short
Certainly,
thing?
Please, by all means.
Yeah, I definitely want to just put a couple of things out there. I'm going to put my email in the chat. If folks have any other questions, whether it's supply chain or anything else that comes to mind, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to have honest conversations and answer hard questions. I think that's, part of our goal here. And so, please do feel free to reach out. I also want to mention again that there are some additional supply chain resources we'll be making publicly available. In the last quarter of this year, a supply chain resource guide and some training webinars for companies specifically to plug in, again, how does it more specifically work to start applying for contracts? I have a colleague, his name is Anthony Negrelli, who is our supply chain coordinator. And so I'm going to make sure that Marlene and Ben have these resources on hand that they can share with all of you. And I hope that they're going to be helpful in moving the process along. I'm going to add one more thing, is that American Clean Power, which is the national offshore wind organization, is having their annual conference in Atlantic City, which is just fortuitous. It rotates from different places, but it's going to be in Atlantic City, October 28th through 30th. And that is another great sort of networking business opportunity to talk to folks about these projects. And I hope to meet all of you in person and see some of you around South Jersey in the coming months. Thanks again.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that great presentation, Karen, Erica. We really appreciate your time and really the transparency on where you're at and where you see it going. So thank you for that. So before we adjourn, just a couple housekeeping items. So this is a reminder for the 42nd annual Sound Off for South Jersey Legislative Conference, which will be held this month on the 27th. So, and there it is, good timing. So I think Ben, we will, or Tom will drop this into the chat, but I'm sure you've all received blast emails on this, so you can search your emails, no doubt, as well. Please, it's a great conference every single year. You can see the lineup there. We have leadership from New Jersey legislature, so please make it a point to pencil that in. And then one other thing that I wanted to mention, I'm going off script a little bit here. Another large project program in South Jersey is the Glassboro-Camden line, which we've had speakers from DRPA and others here that have talked in these forums over the last several years. The project continues to move forward. We're very happy about that. In the upcoming elections, there are, as we understand, a couple referendums. I think the towns are Glassboro and Brooklawn to gauge community interest in that project. I know that Marlene and the Development Council have been playing a lead role in the GCL coalition as well. We see this from the Development Council standpoint as good planning and really addressing the issues of the lack of mass transit options and transportation choices in South Jersey and the economic development that spurs on. So with all that as background, the ask would be, particularly if you live in those two towns of Glassboro and Brooklawn, spread the word that the economic benefits, the connections to employment centers and educational facilities, healthcare facilities that this project will provide. You are going to be seeing, I suspect, a lot of social media type posts on LinkedIn, and that sort of thing coming from DRPA and other interested parties. If the least you could do, like them, repost them. We want to get the word out that of all the benefits of this project. So anyway, I don't know, Marlene, Ben, others, if you had anything to add or subtract to what I just said.
Yeah, I'll just make mention. I think 2 years ago, maybe 3, we formed a coalition for this project. We have well over 100 businesses, public entities, schools, universities signed on. So if you haven't signed on, and I think we'll send out a letter to all that have been on this call as a reminder and an invitation to sign on to this coalition. And then what we would ask you to do is just what Sam was mentioning, be aware of the postings, share it, talk to, friends and neighbors. If our communities have the accurate information, there's no question that this Glassboro-Camden light rail line is a smart public transportation project and will be successful. The problem is always that the information doesn't always get to as many as we need. So we're involved with the DRPA. New Jersey Transit now has this project as their own in putting together a bit of a campaign to get the message out, particularly in Glassboro. I mean, obviously that's the terminus of the or the beginning, if you want to call it the beginning of the light rail project. So we'll be working quite a bit, but we do invite you to sign on to this coalition and support the Glassboro-Camden light rail project.
Excellent. I believe that is all the housekeeping items. So Marlene, unless you have anything else, I think we will adjourn for today. So
good.
Thank you very much, Karen, Erica. Thanks everybody for attending. And until next time, appreciate your participation. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.